Senator Alex Padilla, was thrown out of a press conference in a fairly, aggressive manner. I mean,
Yes.
it was pretty aggressive. I mean,
Yeah.
I think you could say violent. I mean, it's tough based upon how much violence we've seen with the cops and on horses beating, protesters and folks like that. But this was, and then he was forced to get on his knees and then more or less like dropped to the floor while they're saying, put your hands behind your back. Now, one of the things about dropping to the floor is that your hands tend to want to go out and stop your face from hitting the floor. And he was cuffed. I know you're working on a piece. Tell us more about your perspective on this.
Sure. I think we kind of have to see this as, part of a pattern of Trump basically regarding both law enforcement and the military as his personal tools. That people talk about like no kings and Trump is ruling like a king. And I think that's almost like too generous because kings actually have some legitimacy and some rules. He's actually like trying to run the government like a warlord. And for a warlord, the military, the police, they all act as agents on his behalf. And certainly we've seen other cases of this. The mayor in Newark who was arrested, members of Congress who tried to get into the Treasury building, as is their right, as is actually, both a legal and constitutional duty to oversee the government and act as checks, and they were barred. So basically, when we're talking about Trump's like authoritarianism, I think this is the kind of like cutting edge of it, and I think it's something really worth paying attention to, particularly on the military end. I always thought that the pivot point of the first Trump presidency really came in the fall of 2020 with the George Floyd uprising and his desire to use the military to crack down on that, and they turned him down. They rejected that, and I think a lot of what Trump has been doing in the second term is to make sure that situation never happens again. That he has loyalists in who will do his bidding. That he sort of like purged the military under the cover of opposing DEI, purge the military of officers, especially women and people of color. Obviously an even more vivid example is sending in the Marines to Los Angeles. So Trump, this is like a new meaning to America first. Like we're not going to fight them over there because we're going to fight them over here. And so it is that, he sees the purpose of the armed agents of the state as to carry out his own personal policies. I'd also mention the sort of, I don't know how to describe it, the, scandalous speech at Fort Bragg, where they kind of vetted soldiers to make sure that they were Trump supporters and gave a speech to the military that was a partisan speech attacking his enemies, attacking protesters as animals. One has to be cautious, because I think things can always get much worse. And, you have to sort of keep your rhetoric in with the moment. But if there is a path towards American fascism, towards a real breakdown of democracy, it is the turning of the military into a private Praetorian Guard for the president. That's how it will happen.
I mean, this is the stuff I was thinking this afternoon after having seen that footage. I mean, I just remember in the first Trump administration, late in it, in 2020, I think it was, somewhere around there, saying something to the effect on MSNBC, I don't know if we're headed to fascism, but we definitely have to go through this stage to get there.
That's right. Yeah.
And I think we are further down that road. This is not an isolated incident. And the speech at Fort Bragg, what must have happened, or what must, like, I'm trying to sort of like, with a different administration, how would this have gone down differently? And you can apply this to the Fort Bragg thing, and you can apply it to what happened with Padilla, because it seems to me that when the president comes to address Fort Bragg or whatever, military, the commanding officer, says, like, you do not respond to anything that has to do with politics. Mm-hmm. Right? Like, I mean, that is like the standing order that they all have. And it really felt like, watching that speech, that they were not given that order. If anything, they were given the opposite order. Mm-hmm. And, even if it was implicit by the fact that they were vetted. And I just wonder, like, is there a scenario where if Marjorie Taylor Greene had gone, at a, to a press conference that Pete Buttigieg had, and she got up doing this, would she end up on the floor handcuffed? I got to think no.
Yeah, no. I think that definitely the rules of engagement have changed. There's, it seems like, parts of the military, and I think it's a different military. Trump has gotten rid of a lot of people that would have stood in his way and said no. And he also has a Secretary of Defense that is much more compliant than he had in his first term.
Oh, hey, let's play this clip. We have a clip of Hegseth today on the Hill being asked, will you follow a court's orders? Mm-hmm. And this is what he said.
Senator Baldwin asked you about the legal authority for the Marines in my state. I disagree with you. I thought not only do I not want Marines in Iran, I don't want them in California. But I don't want to get a gotcha. They said, what provision? Your administration since then has filed in the federal district court. You're arguing that the Marines should be allowed to defend federal property. I disagree with you. That's your argument. Here's where I hope we can agree. Whatever the federal district court decides, will you abide by it?
Well, this is a pending situation.
So will you agree, though, that it's not my legal view, it's not your legal view that makes the decision in America. It's the federal judiciary. If the federal court in California and the San Francisco, this district judge has orders a preliminary injunction, will you agree to abide by the federal courts?
What I will tell you is my job right now is to ensure the troops that we have in Los Angeles are capable of supporting law enforcement in
Sir, I agree with that, but will you...
And we know we have the constitutional and statutory authority.
That's fine, but can you just assure us that you'll abide by the decisions of the courts?
We've always looked at the decisions of
the vice president has said that he doesn't believe that the courts should be respected in military matters.
This is not my lane, but we also recognize that the way in which the judiciary has expanded its powers.
But can you just give a simple? Okay, let me ask you this: two simple questions. You got 30 seconds. I'm not trying to trick you. I think it would assure the American people, because it shouldn't be Ro Khanna's view of the Constitution. It shouldn't be Secretary Hegseth's. It should be the Supreme Court and the federal courts. Can you assure the American people on two things? You will respect any Supreme Court decision on this matter about whether the Marines are constitutional, and you will respect the district courts when they rule before the Supreme Court rules.
What I can say is we should not have local judges determining foreign policy or national security policy for the country.
So you're not willing to say you would respect those decisions?
What I'm saying is local district judges shouldn't make foreign policy for the United States.
Okay. Now, people,
he means Los Angeles.
Yeah, exactly. People could not see the look on your face. I could see the look on your face as Hegseth was refusing to answer this question. Yeah. I mean, that's why Hegseth is there. It's not because he can, down a half a bottle of whiskey, at a sitting.
Yeah.
It's not just because he's so TV ready. It's that he is going to wait for Donald Trump. He is going to, and if Donald Trump says, I'm ignoring the courts, then he's going to ignore the courts.
Yeah, no. I mean, we're heading for so many different constitutional crises, but this is basically the core of it, that it is a view of the presidency that is sort of the imperial presidency on overdrive. And like if one wanted to be sort of more historical and a little bit more fair-minded, I mean, I do actually think that responsibility for this, goes back many decades and to both parties. That there has been an expansion of presidential power, and Congress has not taken its responsibility. But like in Trump, we are actually seeing where this leads to, and also that the sort of so-called guardrails have all been dismantled, are no longer there in the same degree, and it gets to a situation where, like, it ultimately becomes a matter of force. It becomes a matter of troops on the ground, and the only thing that can stand in their way is going to be mass protesters. Is going to be like, this is the kind of situation where we're in right now, but even more rapidly heading towards, because once we get a situation where the Trump administration, if they do get unfavorable court rulings and they disregard them, what is actually going to stand in their way? Chuck Schumer? I mean, like seriously, like what is the actual?
I am very angry. As soon as we pass the Genius Act, I am going to speak to John Thune about this.
Yeah. But I mean, to give the sort of, like not Schumer, but other Democrats credit, I mean, I think it's not only that, like, Alex Padilla was mistreated, but that he was actually doing the right thing. He was doing the constitutional thing. It is actually, there are actually like legal provisions where he is actually allowed to go where, like, cabinet secretary is and ask questions like that is perfectly acceptable, and in fact that is his constitutional
It's a job
duty.
I mean, it's a
job.
big part of his job is oversight of these agencies.
That's right. I should add that they're lying about this. The Department of Homeland Security released a statement saying he didn't announce that he was a senator. And if you watch the video very clearly,
we watched the video. He literally says, I am Senator Alex Padilla.
Yeah. So, So if it's a situation, I mean, like, basically, the viewers and listeners will know, like, Constitution 101, checks and balances. The courts and the Congress are supposed to act as checks. And in both cases, there's been some level of compromise, particularly with some of the Trump judges, but also Trump saying, people in the administration saying they won't necessarily obey the courts. And on Congress, like, it's on both sides. I should say, like, the Republicans have really made themselves subservient to Trump, and that's a real problem. And they're not doing their job. But the fact that, you also have a sort of feckless Democratic leadership class that actually gets, like, mad whenever any of their members of Congress and Senate actually do their job and stand up. I mean, remember when who was the senator from Maryland who went down to El Salvador?
Van Hollen went down there, and there was other Democratic Congress people, and they were being chastised. By Jeffries and by other Democratic leaders for going down there to attempt to secure Abrego Garcia's release. And I mean, he's at least, he's back in the country. They're bringing charges against him. I don't know the validity of those charges. They sound pretty fishy from my perspective, but nevertheless, at least there is, they were able to achieve some measure of due process. Hey, folks, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and check out our daily show. We do it every day at 12 p.m. Eastern for about 2.5 hours. We even take phone calls. You should check that out.